obviously Hinduism and Islam dominate the religions of the area. Hinduism, the 97% of the world's Hindus live in India. And that doesn't mean 97% of the people in India are Hindu. It's just that that's where the Hindus are concentrated. There's a couple reasons for it, and I'll get to that in a second. The religion is polytheistic, multiple gods, and much of the religious practice is tied to your caste, which we'll talk about later, kind of your position in society, and as it relates to what you do in society. And with Hinduism, there's you're all over the charts as far as how somebody prays, when you pray, what type of religious activities you do. So there's not one single way to be a Hindu. There's multiple ways. And contrast that with Islam, where it's very, very rigid. The third religion we see in the area is an interesting one, Buddhism. This came out of the Hinduism that existed in around the 563 BC. This is the Hinduism then is different a little bit than what we see now. But the Buddha is a title. I don't think his friends called him Bud, they called him Sid. It's kind of a lifestyle that can be superimposed on other religions. So often you'll find people that are Buddhist and Shintoist, Buddhist and Taoist. It was adopted by a Chinese ruler, and it kind of migrated to the north in through Nepal and Bhutan and into China. So it's in the northern area of what we're talking about now, and then we'll see it again when we talk about China. And the Four Noble Truths, you don't have to memorize these, but the idea, if you look at these, that they're not something that is directly religious. I had a book once which I totally disagree with, because there are other elements of Buddhism that are religious, that they were trying to say that it's not really a religion, it's a philosophy. And because of this, you can superimpose it and get it to merge with other religions. I have friends that I grew up with and I've known forever that were Christian Buddhists, and it was always interesting conversations around their house, how that worked. I always think my ex-wife needed to be a Buddhist because she always wanted stuff. So this is, if you're no longer wanting things, then you will no longer suffer. Some of the prayers, or some of the religious practices, revolve around ritual cleansing in the Ganges River, which scares the hell out of me simply because that river is so polluted. And here we can see the variation in the religious practices with predominantly Hinduism. The yellow is Islam, and then you've got the Buddhism superimposed in through here, and then even with you've got your trifecta of Confucianism, Taoism, Buddhism through here. It's always fascinating to me that just how different Islam and Hinduism is. Obviously the most basic one. Remember the emphasis that there's but one God, Allah, in Islam, and then you've got Hinduism, like, screw it, we've got hundreds of gods. We've got lots of idols. We've got lots of secret writings. We can do it all sorts of different ways. And then you've got the uniform dogma within Islam. The only thing I could find is that neither one will eat pork, but it's very, very different between those two religions. What happens, though, is in areas where you have a city that has a strong Muslim population and a strong Hindu population, it's not that they fight, it's just that they kind of interact in different circles. So the businesses they work with, the people they live near, so you've got like a Muslim area and a Hindu area, and they just kind of coexist in the city. Now, India and Pakistan have long fought over different issues, one of which is the water. That's important during the dry season in the Indus River Valley. But most of the conflict relates to the Kashmir region, Kashmir and Jammu. This area, when the vote came to be who would be part of India, who would be part of Pakistan, and by the way, I'm very much summarizing and abbreviating this. Like I said before, most of the area voted, every area but this area voted that if it was Muslim majority, Pakistan. If it was Hindu majority, India, except for this one. This one was a Muslim majority area with a Hindu leader, and so they went with India, and Pakistan disputes that. Well, one of the reasons they went with India is it's an old Silk route. So the trade between Europe and the trade between Asia also was a trade between South Asia as well. Well, the route to get into the Indian subcontinent went through this area. And so this part of India, which is the Kashmir region, had a lot of ties to the rest of India. And so that was kind of the background for that. They've disputed it. They've had some conflicts over it, armed conflicts. It kind of waxes and wanes with the leadership between the two countries, whether or not it becomes violent or not. They do have a very ritualized opening and closing of the border between the two countries. I totally insist that you guys watch it. It's fascinating, because you see kind of the Indian subcontinent versions of machismo, of who's more powerful, who's more mean. That becomes so ritualized now; it's become a spectacle that everybody comes to see. It's comedic, yet at the same time, there's lots of political implications going on. One of the new twists, I don't think it's in this particular video that I posted in Canvas, is that India is using female guards, which would never happen in the male military dominated Pakistan army. India, world's largest democracy. This is a huge democracy. This is important because not because things happen to benefit the greater society in India. They really are trying to improve their economic conditions. They're really trying to address poverty. But democracy is a slow process. We'll see things happen really quickly in China and really slowly in India. I already mentioned the population growth issues. I already mentioned they have a diverse economy, just re-emphasizing that. One of the things I like about India is they have a strong English-speaking population. They were in a former English colony. So a lot of jobs get outsourced to India because really cheap labor, and their English-speaking population is doing well. They've actually have lots of schools to teach people how to speak like an American, so people don't realize when they're talking to customer support or tech support that they're talking to India, because the person will use American slang. They're actually getting much better at it than they had in the past. I was tech support for my Dell, and I'm talking to the person, and I'm like, they had a weird accent. I couldn't place it because they used terms like y'all and contractions that you don't usually hear in formal English. And so I finally, when the call was over, I'm like, do you mind me asking where you're calling from? And the woman starts laughing. She goes, well, I'm calling from India, but I went to school in Texas. I just thought that was funny. A lot of the growth in outsourcing to India happened 25 years ago, when they realized that the computer programs they'd written only had 2 slots for the year. So instead of it saying 1990 in the computer program, it would just say 90. Well, once we were going to get to the year 2000, the fear was that all the computer programs would look at it and say, oh my God, it's the year 1900 instead of the year 2000, because it was just going to have 00. So it was this Y2K bug, and tons of programs had to be rewritten quickly and fix this problem. So India kind of stepped up and did a lot of the reprogramming during that. So nowadays, if you've got computer programming, you can just outsource to India. It's like, I need this done. You can have it set up very, very quickly. My father-in-law's business, they do that. It's an insurance company. And they got rid of most of their staff and kept a handful of key programmers, simply because it was so much cheaper to send it off to India. The caste system in India is complicated, to say the least. I can't do it justice in a few seconds, but I'll try and just summarize it. It's a social structure where it's kind of what your position and what you do in life, where you've got the lower class laborers, the lower caste, laborers, and you've got merchants who are higher caste, and you've got warriors and rulers, your political leadership in a caste, and then you've got your religious at the very top of the caste system. You're born into it. If your father was a merchant, you will be a merchant. If you're going to marry, you will marry within that same caste as well. You live amongst that caste. So it's not something that's fluid and mobile. Your religious practices in Hinduism is tied to your caste. And so everybody within your caste shares the same practices. If you're a farming caste, maybe it's tied to the celebrations of the harvest. So it's part of who you are and your position in life. The top being the Brahmin, the religious caste, and then the bottom, they're actually technically not even in the caste system, they're below the caste system. The common term used by the West is the untouchables, but they're the Dalits. These are the ones that would be working with waste, um, removal of dead bodies, that kind of stuff. Very, very, very poor. And it's kind of into the culture where you've got a lower class citizen. Now, some of the rules about how the untouchables could be treated have been changed, and they're providing education to them. But it's if you've got a system where you've got an inherently underclass of population, they're still the poorest group of all of these. I mean, this is a Dalit neighborhood for you. Now, the caste system is breaking down in the cities simply because we don't have an automobile manufacturing caste. We don't have a cafeteria caste. And if everybody has to work together, you can't have a managerial caste if the managers are incompetent. Capitalism doesn't like that. So it's broken down a lot in the cities, but what we find is that for the most part, these guys all have 3 different jobs. They're all in the same caste, but they all still hang out together. They're more than likely going to marry within their caste still. So it's got the social remnants of it, but economically it's disappearing in the big cities. I've had 2 students who migrated from India in recent years. One came from a very, very rural area, and the caste system was very much in place there. And the other one, when I asked them about their caste system, and they were from Calcutta, they just kind of laughed at me and said, "No, we my parents are caste, my girlfriend's from the same caste, but that's about it for anything related to the caste. Nobody really cares anymore." But that was in the city versus the rural areas. Now, Pakistan, this is democratic now. They've gone through a military coup for a while. They actually had a female leader for a while, Benazir Bhutto. The United States has become friendly with Pakistan for a couple of reasons. One, this is where we've got some of those fundamentalist terrorist training camps are in through here, and so that is a threat. And so we're trying to work with Pakistan to get rid of them. Also, that ongoing war in Afghanistan, this becomes a staging area and a way to get into Pakistan. So the United States has been trying to be friendly with them, and we want to build a pipeline to get through Afghanistan and through Pakistan to access that Central Asian oil. Sorry, I'm laughing. Cricket always makes me laugh because it's the craziest sport where it goes for 2 days. They have tea breaks. They score of 150 to 17 is considered close. And I've tried to watch it a million times. I just can't figure it out. But if somebody wants to find a way to make cricket interesting for me, send me the link and I'd be more than happy to figure it out. Bangladesh, remember they got their independence in 1971? They were, of the 3 countries, they were the one that had the least economic development. So it's not surprising that poverty is rampant through here. The other problem with Bangladesh is this area down and through here is a giant river delta. So when the Ganges floods, it floods the river delta. So this is a constant problem. They had a hurricane that hit a couple of years ago that came across this very low-lying area, and it killed tens of thousands of people because it is in such a physically precarious area. But on the bright side, this is one of the governments that said we will have these positions in our government for women. This is basically twice the rate it is in the United States for our federal government of the number of women in elected positions. There's a Ganges. This picture, when we talk about climate change, this one's the one that always scares me because a few feet change in sea level is going to displace tens of millions of Bangladeshis. Those tens of millions of Bangladeshis are going to go and spill over into India. This is where I think we're going to see the first global problem of climate change on a massive scale, because those tens of millions of people going into India could disrupt the world's largest democracy. We had 1 million migrants come from the Middle East and into Europe in the past couple of years, and look what it's done to the Europeans. They're all freaking out. Their turnover in governments, and Europe's one of the richest areas on earth, and they couldn't handle the impact of 1 million. I can't imagine what tens of millions going into India would do and to destabilize that government, but hopefully we'll see. Now, what do you do for iron when you're a poor country? And iron is needed for construction. So you just buy used ships, you break them apart, melt the metal, and there you go. That's your source. It's called ship breaking. So all the old ships that are no longer in service, no longer efficient, they're too expensive to retrofit. The companies in India and Bangladesh will buy them, tear them apart, and recycle just about everything they can. Now, remember, they don't have the same labor laws we do. They don't have the same safety. So it's frightening what happens in these areas where they tear apart the ships. Here you can see it. This is a recent picture of Chittagong and all the ships that are being dismantled here in the water. This one, it's not a great photo, but there's oil leaks. I mean, there's oil leaks, there's fuel leaks, there's asbestos. It's frightening. I have a ship breaking video on Canvas. I encourage you to watch it. It's kind of scary what happens at these places, but this is, what do you do? I mean, if they didn't have this, well, they couldn't afford to get iron on the open market any other way. I'm not going to touch on Sri Lanka. I left this in here just as one of those stories that I talked about for years, the ongoing conflict with the Sinhalese and Tamils. It's just nice that they're not fighting anymore. But it was that typical, you had a smaller group that wanted equal rights and they fought for it and got it over time. The tsunami in 2004 hit this area pretty hard, and this was when we knew that the civil war was almost over, because both sides agreed to a peace to stop fighting until they could get everything rebuilt and they could work together to help those that were affected by the tsunami. And when we talk about Indonesia, we'll see another group that's rebelling against the government that didn't do that, and so that was not a good sign. But the fact that they were going to put down their arms to help rebuild, I thought that was a good sign in 2004. And sure enough, it led to their peace. Our last two countries in South Asia, Nepal and Bhutan, they're kind of fun. Nepal had a long civil war, some mild unrest. It's the reason anybody hears about Nepal anymore is simply because this is how you access the climbing in the Himalayas. China's kind of limited it, and everybody goes through Nepal. It's just beautiful. And no, I don't even think I'm going to put Nepal on the quiz. And there's Dr. Saludin. Now, Bhutan fascinates me. There's King Wangchuck. He's no longer the king, but it's King Wangchuck and his 4 queens. Everybody Wangchuck tonight. This is a Buddhist country with a very strong central government, unitary. Remember I said that we talked about Russia and the United States, that there's a federal system where you've got lots of powers allocated locally, and a unitary system where the power is in one place. And here it sits with the king. He actually wanted the population to decide if he should be king. So they had an election in 2008 that said, should I be the king anymore? And the population overwhelmingly said, yes, you should be. And the person who was running against him didn't even want to run because they didn't want him to not be king. And it's not that they were afraid of him. It's just that's the society is geared towards it. Now he stepped down and his son took over. I can't pronounce his name, but he's now the new king. They had a recognition of, you know what, we don't have a lot of economic development. We don't have a lot of exports. So if you look at any economic charts, Bhutan always ranks really, really low. But Bhutan was like, well, that's not how you should measure us. That's not how you should measure our society. Are the people happy? So the concept of gross national happiness kind of came out of Bhutan. And there are groups that have measures that's not uniform, but the gross national happiness, I thought, well, that's a nice way to look at a society. It's not how rich, how poor they are. It's, how happy is the population. And apparently they're not unhappy. They can't get tobacco there. All right, see you guys later. Good night from South India. Next time we'll see you in Southeast Asia.